For this edition of Taking a Stab's Horror Tuesdays, I wanted to continue stepping out of my comfort zone in some respect. Although I often look at largely known horror films like Jigsaw, or It, or the A Nightmare on Elm Street series, I also want to use this channel as a means to share my thoughts on various lesser-known concepts. Whether it be because the films reach very high ground or very low ground, or because the moving parts at play show slivers of light enough to make me excited for a filmmaker's future, or an actor, or an actress, and that's why I try and find as many unique horror films as possible, to make Taking a Stab a definitive celebration of the horror genre. The Poughkeepsie Tapes is a 2007 documentary-style horror film directed by John Eric Dowdle, otherwise known for his credentials with As Above, So Below, Devil, and Quarantine, a trio of horror films I am familiar with, but not particularly impressed by. The cast includes Bobby Sue Luther, Samantha Robson, and Ivar Brauger, to name a few. For lower-budget horror fans, Bobby Sue Luther has also been seen in the Laid to Rest film. The Poughkeepsie Tapes received little fare from critics and audiences alike, and I don't really have any information in regards to what the actual consensus or final word is about the film. Although the Poughkeepsie Tapes was completed in 2007 and originally meant for release in early 2008, the film found itself abruptly shelved, until having a brief release on home video in 2014, and it wasn't until late 2017 the film was released on DVD and Blu-ray by Scream Factory. The film documents the murders of a fictional serial killer in Poughkeepsie, New York, and is told through interviews comprised of experts, witnesses, the family of various victims, and also the footage from the killer's stash of snuff films. For starters, I want to say I really like the concept of this film, and it's a concept I would like to see experimented with more and eventually perfected. Although there is a lot of understandable intrigue as far as serial killers are concerned, with how their minds work and the simple audacity of the acts they've committed, it isn't the best precedent to set that actual serial killers are so often adapted into mainstream films. The concept of this film allows a documentary-style approach, depicting the victims and the acts committed against them, while, at the same time, not exploiting actual victims. At times we find ourselves lost with our fascination with criminals and their acts that we often glamorize, and don't express enough that they are terrible, terrible human beings, and their victims didn't deserve to die, and don't deserve to have what was done to them exploited into a big-budget film, regardless of how intrigued we may be. The Poughkeepsie Tapes does well at crafting the aesthetic of an actual documentary, although, unfortunately, in some instances, it should be noted that it does plunder with some jarring performances, but I don't necessarily think they make or break the film, nor do I think the better acting helps them superbly make or break the film. I enjoyed the teacher featured in the film, who did his best to play up the toll seeing serial killers can take, but at the same time, I can't say that everyone else delivered their performances with the same effort. The scenes involving the serial killer, meanwhile, are creepy and fittingly disturbing, highlighting the odd eccentricities that he had. The film opts against violence, instead coasting on the imagery itself, and in most regards, it's effective. However, I do have some criticisms with how they are presented. During sequences where the killer preys on his victims, the scenes feature eerie music and sound incorporated for dramatic effect, which, keeping with the aesthetic of it being a mock documentary, is a peculiar decision. Also, the footage is intentionally obscured and shoddy in nature, with the approach meant to come across as a home movie and meant to highlight its imperfections, and it suggests that this is, in fact, not a film being watched. But the fact is, a lot of it's just really hard to see what's happening, and it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense for such an intelligent serial killer who cares enough to record his victims as masterpieces would be recording said footage on a potato. Nevertheless, I will also mention that the actor who plays the serial killer delivers a creepy performance as well, particularly in the scenes that involve conversations with children. A sequence involving himself in a vehicle with one of his victims also boasts some of the film's creepier, more uncomfortable moments. The storyline itself suspends disbelief a lot, and is ultimately one of the bigger criticisms I have, with the killer being far more impervious than what's realistic, and the police department being far inepter than what they should be. Certain aspects of the behavior and the analysis provided from the characters can feel sometimes pedestrian or even cliché, sometimes feeling as though it was checking things off from a textbook. I did enjoy certain details brought out, certain ways the police department advanced themselves in the investigation, and I appreciate that they kept a distance between ourselves and the serial killer. The film understands the most interesting aspect about a serial killer is that we don't understand them, and it doesn't squander that intrigue, choosing to shroud him in mystery rather than provide a character study. Unfortunately, he feels a little too much like he was meant to be a serial killer of all serial killers, the worst of the worst, and that proclamation falls a little flat. In all truth, I would recommend this film for those interested in such a concept, and I think it really does bolster some eerie moments that, although I think could have been done better, could still be effective to the right person. I like the concept a lot in this film, but I think it could have used a tighter, more polished storyline, and that it could have went a little further with its execution of the documentary approach. Have you guys watched the Poughkeepsie Tapes? What were your thoughts? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comment section below, or hit me up with a video response. I'd love to know what you think. This has been the 4th edition of Horror Tuesdays, and I'll see you next time.